Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. And thank you very much to 3M and UNFCCC for hosting this session, which I hope will be an hour of inspiration on collaboration and how it can accelerate action towards a net zero future. We're going to have a great conversation, but we actually have a very special guest to kick us off. Thank you so much to General Motors as well, and thank you to A.Y. Young, who I saw yesterday absolutely blowing up the Youth Pavilion. A.Y. is one of 17 youth leaders who are part of the UN Secretary-General's Envoy for Youth. A.Y., it's over to you.
A local hip-hop artist makes an international name for himself. He is the first artist to power his concert with 100% renewable energy.
It is a real honor to recognize Mr. A.Y. Young, the founder of Battery Tour.
It's incredible. Can't wait for you to see this. The United Nations is now throwing its support behind him.
Mr. Young has made a big impact in his young life, born in 1991. He's a singer-songwriter, a dancer, producer, entrepreneur, and sustainability advocate. He's staged and performed more than 800 concerts. He was named by the United Nations recently as one of 17 youth world leaders of the world, the only individual selected for that honor from the United States.
I'm here to listen. Don't ask me questions. Tell me what to do. Give me ideas.
My mission is to kind of break down these silos, these barriers, and build bridges to power collective action by bringing everyone together.
It's going to be incredible. My work plan is 3 different phases. I'm going to make an album powered 100% by renewable energy.
Right now, A.Y. Young is working on an album based on the 17 United Nations goals. Major stars like Tech-9 and Billie Eilish will collaborate.
There are 700 million people that are still living in poverty.
The whole premise of your music is about collaboration
100%.
and about getting excited. It's about going across the finish line.
I don't think anyone can disagree that everyone needs to have access to energy, water, food. And I believe it's that everyone in the world, we're all these outlets for change.
We can change the world.
Thank you guys. What's up? We can change the world, guys. This is the anthem for Goal 17. That's definitely what you're doing, Miss Gayle. And you're doing, Miss Kristen from GM. Okay, guys. Hope you guys enjoy yourself. Let's get the volume a little. Hey. Look who's made a mind up. And now I can't find the reasons not to give up. It's going to take all of us, guys. Join together. Teachers, leaders, dreamers, let's go. Oh, you guys having a good time in COP? They always take the right away. Keep the bill and make you pay. We can change the world. You guys can sing it with me if you want to. 5 words. Go, we can change the world. Good morning, guys. Welcome to a good panel. We can change the world. Yeah. So we got to come together now. We got to come together now. Work together, right? See, I don't like it any more than you do. Hey. But in your ignorance, that bliss is void. You guys good? You doing good? So it's about time, be humble and realize that we are one and the same, unique and one of a kind. Whoa, brighter days come ahead when we join together. Put your best foot forward, go and make an effort. They call me AY, I spoke to Akon, Marvin Gaye, we in the grapevine. Let's have a great time here, influence great minds, I'm trying to paint mine. You guys having a good time? You ready for a good panel? This is great, guys. I made one song reach goal. This is goal 17. You guys can sing it with me. Go. We can change the world. Sing it out right now. In the talking, we can change the world. Black, white, yeah. Everybody saying we can change the world. We got to come together now. A little different than most pavilions, right? See, we got to come together now. Make some noise for Gayle one time for 3 years. Hey, we got to go together through the wind and stormy weather. I think we gotta come together to fight climate change and save the planet. Hey.
Hey, why young? Thank you. I have no idea how to follow that, so I'm not even going to try. So I'd like to introduce you to our panel first of all, and hell, that's a motivation. What motivates you to focus on collaboration and to be here today to talk about that and inspire others? So first, Gayle Schueller from 3M. Gayle is the Senior Vice President and Chief Sustainability Officer for 3M. Gayle started 3M's corporate laboratory as a product development engineer, but has over 29 years of experience of business, technical leadership, and spans a broad range of businesses. What can you see from your experience, Gayle? What motivates you to focus on collaboration?
Well, for me, I strongly believe that none of us alone really accomplishes that much, but when we come together, we can make a huge impact, whether it's between companies or governments or civil society. And so I'm delighted to be here to help collaborate to really make a difference through our products and our engagement in the communities from 3M.
Gayle, thank you. Our next panelist is Acconcia, and we're wonderfully represented from the Director of International Affairs and Climate Finance for the Director-General for Climate Action for the European Commission. Diana, thank you so much for being part of this panel. What motivates you to be here talking about collaboration today?
Thank you, and is this on? Yes. Good morning everybody. I think I represent the public sector, even if in a very special incarnation, which is the European Union, that for those who are not part of it sometimes can be a very strange animal, but it's still a representation of the European government, if you want, and government and governance. And for me, the main motivation that takes me here to talk about collaboration is the fact that we, the states, the public sector, cannot achieve climate change alone. But the private sector, sorry, climate change, climate transition alone. The private sector cannot do alone either, because I think if we have seen that if we leave everything to the markets alone cannot achieve the change that we need to achieve. So the only way to achieve this is that the public sector, the politician, the civil servants like me work with the representatives of the private sector like yourself that are equally motivated to change the way that we do things. And that's what I want to be the testimony of this morning. Thank you. And thank you very much for the invitation, because I think that it's very important that we talk about this together.
Thank you, Diana. Our next panelist is Walaa El-Husseiny. Please let me not have tortured your name. Who is the Executive Director of the Global Compact Network in Egypt. Walaa, what interests you in terms of collaboration? What is your focus, and why is it important for UNGC?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the invitation, and thank you for all the audience to be here today. For me, I believe in togetherness. No individual can do the job alone, especially if it's on a global level. And I believe COP itself is an inspirational collaborative work, bringing all these entities, governments, private sector, NGOs, even normal individuals, just for the sake of one global cause, this is amazing. So this is an inspiration in itself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And our last panelist is Kristen Siemen, Vice President for Workplaces and Chief Sustainability Officer for General Motors, and the great bringer of AY Young as well. So, yes, what motivates you to be here today?
Thank you, and thank you again for having us here today. We have a long partnership with 3M, and I think it's just another great sign of how much collaboration is important. At GM, we strive to be the most inclusive company in the world, and that goes beyond just our own team, but also what we do and the products we sell. And so it really is about our theme or our mantra at GM is about everybody in. And we want to find a way to bring everybody into the solutions and to helping us transition to an all-electric future. We know we can't do that by ourselves, so being here today and with these great partners, again, a sign of how companies need to work together, private and public sectors, et cetera. So just thanks for having me.
Thanks so much. And just to introduce me, so you know who you've got standing at the top of the panel and telling people to shush if they go over too much. I'm Leslie Mitchell. I'm the Associate Director for Forum for the Future. We are an international sustainability NGO, and we've worked for the last 25 years to help businesses, philanthropies, international organizations and civil society work together to create and accelerate a much more sustainable future. So I'm very pleased to be here in this room with some of the great movers, and we catalyse, at Forum, we catalyse collaboration by bringing together different actors across the sector with a really strong focus on inclusivity. And that may be from buildings or from fibres such as cotton or protein, for example, and the great transition that I look after, which is in sustainable agriculture. So I'm really looking forward to having this conversation from some very diverse perspectives today. So I'm going to shuffle into the middle in a moment. But I just wanted to ask you to start perhaps with reflecting on where there are areas that you see are ripe for collaboration or priorities for focus. And are there any particular takeaways you've had from this COP27 that you've seen for real potential? Gayle.
Okay. So I think basically I can look very broadly about collaboration. So at 3M, one of our requirements is that every new product we launch must have a sustainability value commitment, which takes it beyond where it's been. So some of those are directly into climate. Some of them might be more in a circular economy or more about how we advance safety or healthcare. When we think about those, and specifically some areas that are ripe for collaboration in the context of the COP discussions, I think transitioning to our transportation industry more and more electric, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about that from Kristen as well, is a great opportunity. What we find is 3M has been with the automakers since automobiles started. We've also been with the electronics industry since it started. And so what that means is we can bring some of the abilities in electronics that require it to be lighter and more streamlined and faster and brighter, bring that to automotive that requires things like long life and stability on impact and all of these types of things. But we couldn't do that by ourselves. We need to work with our partners who understand the details of what's required in its application. And we learn as we go. The other piece is that there's a lot of regulations that go into this. So whether it's the electric vehicles themselves or the grid that serves them, and now is operating in more of a two-way direction because it has renewable energies coming in, people pulling more charge out as they charge their vehicles. I'd say that those electric vehicles, grid modernization, and the resilience and stability that goes with it, those are a couple areas that are hot on my mind as a result of this COP discussion.
Thank you. And Diana, you've been in the thick of things for the last couple of weeks. I just wonder if you have any particular takeaways from COP27 or areas where you can see real potential for collaboration.
Thank you. Yes, starting from where we are at the COP, you know that these are difficult days because now we are crunch time. It is not easy, so I won't say more because things are in a state of continuous flux, and whatever I say, maybe it's already outdated. So, but the main issue that we are arguing about at this COP is what I call the money. Let's call it like this in general. Be it for loss and damage, be it for the fact that the developed countries are not fulfilling their promise of the 100 billion per year, be it for the future goal for climate finance after 2025, so beyond the 100 billion, be it for what I consider perhaps the most important issue that for the moment is a little bit buried, but I think it's what we really have to look at, which is Article 2.1c of the Paris Agreement, which is the alignment of the financial flows with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. So how can we mobilize financial flows in general? So here we're not talking about rich countries giving to poor countries, but the whole of the financial flows at world level to achieve the climate transition. And here we're talking about a lot of things. We are talking about public finance, yes, but we're also talking about sustainable finance in general, so what you were saying before. We are talking about carbon pricing and how do we use the proceeds of the carbon pricing to finance the transition. We are talking about banks, multilateral banks, but also private banks, whatever. So it is a huge issue that at the moment is a bit hidden. It wasn't possible to have an agenda point because a number of the countries negotiating here, particularly developing countries, are afraid that it will distract from the fact that the rich have to pay. So from the more traditional donor-receiver relationship. And I think this is a pity because this is the issue for the future. And this is the issue where the public and private need to collaborate because nothing is out of the equation when we talk about the famous trillions that we need to really finance the transition. What can I say about what we do in the European Union? You will probably know that the European Union has a very ambitious objectives of cutting emissions by 55% by 2030. In fact, my boss has already said that we can get to 57 because we are adopting, as we speak, a legislative package that will take us beyond 55%. And we want to become climate neutral in 2050, and we have a legislative roadmap to get there. And this doesn't mean that everybody agrees in the European Union that we have to do that, because this transition has costs. So one of the questions is, how do we internally mobilize the necessary capitals? And one of the answers is a partnership between the public and the private sector. So we have a number of programs that will ensure that the climate transition will go hand in hand with sustainable and inclusive economic growth, with modernizing our economy. And again, we can only do it with the strongest partnership with the private sector. We need to give the right incentives to develop climate neutral products and production process, otherwise we can't get anywhere. I would give a couple of examples without going too much in depth, but for example, we support industrial alliances. One example is the European Clean Hydrogen Alliance. Another one is the EU Solar PV Industry Alliance, the Battery Alliance. We catalyze industry, we mobilize industry to get together, and this is not about necessarily a funding, but simply to get together, to coordinate, and to have common strategies. Another example that I want to give, which I think is very, very telling, is the Innovation Fund. Said very simply, the Innovation Fund consists in taking the proceeds of the auctions of the credits for our emission trading system, so for our cap and trade system. The proceeds go to our member states and they go into this Innovation Fund, and they are distributed to companies or consortia that present ambitious, innovative projects that are taking us towards climate neutrality. So it's a very simple thing. You tax carbon and you put the proceeds into innovation. And the Innovation Fund has large-scale calls and small-scale calls, because I think we need both very large companies, large projects, large infrastructure, but we also have to finance innovation coming from the ground, from smaller companies that have excellent ideas and no money. And if we look at this at the world scale, which is more of my orientation because I've always worked in international relations, the problem of access to finance for companies that have good ideas is particularly acute in developing countries, because in Europe, in the United States, there is a sophisticated financial sector, so a good idea probably will find money. But this is not the case in many countries. I worked for 3 years in Africa. I was a European Union ambassador to Ghana. And for me, the crucial problem in that country, where there was a very, very lively private sector and a lot of people with good ideas, was to find money. Because when they were looking for money, they would face an interest rate of 30% in a bank, and that's simply impossible. Who can borrow at 30%? So it will be crucial for the future of the green transition to make sure that all over the world, and not only in what we call the global north in a way, I don't like it very much, but it's a way of speaking, that everywhere companies that have ideas, that have energy, that can contribute, are able to access to the financing that we need. And this we are not going to achieve with the traditional development finance. We need the mobilization of the private financial institutions, and our public finance needs to be the catalyzer for the private finance to go towards the good ideas.
Thank you. And I guess what I reflect in hearing you speak, Diana, is that COP26 was very much about big ideas, but the reason this one is tough is because it is about how do we turn this into action, and the fundamental nature of shifting financial flows to enable these innovations to work, but also reconfiguring and repatterning the relationships that we have within the sector to enable these to come to fruition. So thank you. Can I hand over to Walaa now? I'm sorry if I always mess up your name. Walaa? Okay. Where do you see areas ripe for collaboration, particularly through UNGC?
Okay, UNGC, in addition to laying the foundation of responsible businesses in 4 main areas: human rights, environment, anti-corruption, and labor, one of our main success factors is partnerships for the goal. We mainly work within the ecosystem. We bring the ecosystem of the private sector. And we had launched 3 main, very successful initiatives during COP. What we do is we don't work in isolation. We work with the private sector, with the government, with the technical institutions, with the financial institutions, and we bring everyone, we engage everyone. We have an open policy dialogue, and we do a policy advocacy. And we recently launched the Building Better initiative, which aims to make the construction and real estate sector go green, and another one for the solar sector in Egypt. And we engaged everyone in the ecosystem in this initiative with commitments and with clear outputs, and it was amazing. It was the first time to be done in that way, with such collaboration. And I believe our private sector started to see that it's not competition anymore, it's collaboration. And this is what we are trying to emphasize on. And on a global level, the United Nations Global Compact has the ABLC initiative. I think some of you have heard about it. It's African Business Leaders Initiative, where leaders from all over African countries all gathered together and agreed on one climate statement and a set of actions to be taken afterwards. So this is how we work on collaboration, and this is how our unique value proposition would serve the private sector. And one of the things that we do to help our private sector is the capacity building programs. And this year we ran the Climate Ambition Accelerator, which is an incubator program for the private sector to set its science-based targets. So this is how, as UN Global Compact, we are trying to advance the climate agenda of the private sector in Egypt.
Thank you. And I see these beacons for change, and UNGC one of those, particularly in terms of capability building and helping people understand the frameworks that they're going to need to do that reconfiguration of the sector. Kristen, please tell us, what are your priorities? And also, really keen to understand what the success factors are for a good collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. So great comments already, and I think, again, it's a sign, you know, organizations like UNGC are conveners to bring us together, to help us, you know, spur that collaboration. I love what you said, that it needs to be collaboration, not competition, because it really is. We all have a problem to solve. You know, Gayle and I have talked a lot over the years. We're both engineers by trade, which we're trained to solve problems, and this is a gigantic problem that we're all trying to solve together. And so, you know, the success factors, I think, are the areas where you really see that true collaboration. General Motors signed on to the First Movers Coalition for concrete here at COP27, which I think is another sign of what we can do to maybe spur the industry and get more others on board. The more we innovate, the more we work together is going to continue to show those solutions, make them more affordable for companies and sectors to join on. Some of the other areas I think that are really important for everybody, you know, the transportation industry as a whole is certainly one of the biggest solution factors to addressing climate change. And so if we can tackle the transportation industry, we'll be able to do the other challenges we have in front of us. Renewable energy is a big one. We can't do that by ourselves. That's going to take public and private. General Motors has made some major commitments around renewable energy. In fact, we just completed all of the sourcing for projects that we need to meet our goal in the U.S. to be 100% renewable by 2025. We're now well on our way to achieve our global target, which is 2035. And those conversations need to happen at places like this to really get governments and public sector, the utilities together to figure out how we're going to move forward. So lots of opportunities. I was on a panel earlier this week where there was a leader from the Smithsonian that was speaking, and he was talking about looking for the optimists. He said the optimists are doers. And I thought about it, and I thought, you know, when we talk about catastrophes that we have in the world, whether it be climate impacts or others, we say look for the helpers. And I think from a climate change standpoint, if we can keep looking for the doers, looking for the optimists, that's where things are going to happen.
Yeah, there's certainly no time to stand back and watch. Exactly. So from the point of view of UNGC, one of the key questions I have is around what makes collaboration successful and what principles underpin a good collaboration. One of the things that we've really noticed at Forum for the Future is the need to build much more inclusivity into the processes. This isn't just about bringing a number of people or inviting a number of people into the room, but creating the conditions where people can actively participate and co-create. So for example, we have a major regenerative agriculture collaboration in the US, and we have proactively engaged everyone from Cargill and General Mills and the big players through to the Intertribal Council, through to the Latin farmers, through to the Young Farmers Coalitions, and created an environment where there is effectively a level playing field to have that conversation. So that was my big takeaway, was around inclusivity and also shared action. But I wonder for you, Walaa, but what matters to you and to UNGC in terms of really successful collaboration?
Okay, for successful collaboration, we need to understand that each company has its own unique needs and requirements, and no model will fit all. So one of the major success factors is to know how to tailor what you provide to the needs of the companies. And this is what we are trying to do. So we have big companies, we have SMEs, we have very small companies. We cannot combine all of this together. So we are trying to have independent or different initiatives that would serve every category and every group of private sectors. And we are tailoring programs that would serve the need of every one of them. So it is not just that we have this program, so you all come and enroll in the program. No, this is not the way it is. And one thing is very important for us is that we provide peer learning and exposure. And in our Climate Ambition Accelerator, we had this very wonderful chance for all our companies in Egypt to get introduced to different technologies and different experience and different know-how. And we had these very wonderful discussions with same industries across everywhere in the world, asking how did you do that and how can I do that. And you know, the private sector in Egypt has a very high potential, and everyone is putting his climate targets, maybe not based on science so far, except for some of the few big companies, but they want to go there. So you will find a company saying that I want to be net zero by 2050, but it doesn't know how to go there. So having this accelerator, we brought everyone on board, and we brought the know-how from other developed countries, and we made this very platform open for all. So this is one of the very successful things that we have done so far, and we're looking forward to have more and more companies joining this accelerator in the next year.
It's really interesting meeting people where they are and looking at where there's complementary capability to bring those together to actually really synergize action. That's really, really interesting. Thank you. Gayle, I wonder, from your point of view with 3M, you've been involved with a whole range of collaborations. What are the success factors that you see from 3M's point of view that have made those work?
Yeah, when I think about great collaborations, and I would say, yes, this is true at 3M. It might be included at a lot of places and maybe even in a personal life. But you want to first have common objectives in a sense of culture and things where you're consistent with your interests. Then I think you need to understand where what I like to call superpowers are. So, like for 3M, for example, we know that we have scientific capabilities, and especially in the materials space, where we can really help solve real problems in the world. So, you know, whether it's with General Motors or things with construction in the United States, or the renewable energy grid, we know that we can offer materials and partner with people who are maybe combining them into something bigger, creating something more broad, and because we have common values, then we can bring that together and produce a product, whether it's the home that you live in with a roof that eats smog out of the air, or a stable electric grid that is smart enough to know when there's an early signal of disruption before someone gets an outage in their home. Or something we might do with, you know, electric vehicles to help them have a longer range or a more reliable, safer drivetrain. So I think it's really about that direction being consistent and knowing who has the strengths where, so you can properly leverage them together for something stronger than the individual companies separately or organizations separately.
Yeah, and Diana, you're very firmly in the middle of many different actors and many different perspectives. And I'm equally interested in your previous role as an ambassador. What did you see whenever you've been trying to bring people together toward change as being the key success factors that you found?
I think what you said before, actually, the fact of having the same objectives is very important. If the objectives are not aligned, any partnership is destined to fail, because at the end of the day, at some point, the problems will come to the surface, and then everything will break apart. But from the point of view, again, of representing here the public sector, the regulators, even if as I was telling Maxime the other day, I've never been a regulator myself. I've always been rather a negotiator. But from the point of view of the regulator, it's very important that everybody knows and understands their role. So for the public sector and for the European Commission that I represent, it's always important we are there to set clear rules for the private actors to move and to achieve their objectives and to prosper. And the private sector, after all, they want to make money, right? Otherwise, all the sustainability objectives are also going to fail. So I think every partnership is based on common objectives, on clear rules, on knowing what each party can bring to the partnership, and from the point of view of the public sector, is to bring clear, predictable rules and to provide the right incentives. I think after all, the green transition boils down to incentives. What incentives? The incentives that we had in the past were clearly wrong because they took us where we are at boiling point, because we didn't see any cost in polluting and in emitting. We need to create the economic and behavioral incentives to redress things. And this is, I think, is the role of the public sector, while allowing the private sector to be what it is, because we cannot change, I think, the nature of what we are. And I think on the basis of this understanding, we can have a very fruitful collaboration, and as I said before, the only way to achieve this is that governments and private sector work together.
Thank you. And I guess there's one point that really sticks out for me in terms of success factors is focusing on carbon but not having carbon tunnel vision, in the sense that we're trying to recreate, reimagine, reconfigure the way the world works in short order. And one of the phrases that seems to really resonate when I've been working in Southeast Asia, for example, is that we're creating a world that is ecologically safe and socially just. And I think that taking that broad picture seems to be a really key principle to take into these collaborative spaces. I just wanted to give us a chance to focus on where collaboration has benefited your work, and perhaps some of those key examples in your work where your opportunity or your synergies have accelerated and created much more through collaboration. Can I come back to you first, Gayle?
Sure, happy to, and maybe I'll facilitate a volley over to the other side, and
yeah,
I'll give an example with General Motors. So back in the day, and this is a long time ago, but I'll just share, you know, when internal combustion engines were getting started and there was a significant pollution, General Motors actually came to 3M, and there was a development of the carburetor that allowed us to pull the pollutants out, at least reduce the pollutants substantially, of gas-fueled engines. So we all know that we're in the middle of, so that's something that changed the world, literally. And I shudder to think of how much worse things could have been if we hadn't invented that. But now we know it's time to step to the next level. And so as we move into automotive electrification, we work with General Motors and others looking at how do we make sure that our battery life is really efficient? How do we make sure that vehicles can be lighter weighted with, say, for example, glass bubbles technology that can lightweight components? Or as we move from steel towards aluminum or composites materials, we need to use more adhesives instead of welding. You know, so 3M really comes into those places, as well as maybe some spaces you might not expect, like helping the battery be more efficient, or helping it last longer, or helping it even be more safe. So those would be some of the things. And I don't know, maybe it goes over to Kristen for the other side of that story.
Yeah, sure. So as Gayle said, I mean, our supply base, and particularly great partners like 3M, are key to our success. We you know, as I spent most of my career in product development, so working on not just the technology piece of it, but the safety, the regulatory, and many people don't realize how complex the automotive industry is and the life of the product. I mean, we're all sitting in here holding electronics in our hand that don't last the life of an automobile. And so when you think about the temperature extremes, the durability of the products, and so having really strong suppliers like 3M and the safety factor, those are so critical for our success. And so driving those efficiencies, driving those innovation, and then maybe on the other side of it, to even stretch out the collaboration a little farther, and why COP is so important is policies and regulations that we see from our governments. And as a global companies, it's really important that those have synergies and they don't work against each other. So the new clean energy tax credits that have come to play as part of IRA in the US, are really important, and seeing renewable energy policies, permitting practices, so we can do things like mining faster, change over our facilities faster to be able to produce electric vehicles. Those collaborations and those conversations to again, happen across countries, across companies, organizations are really, I think, the key to success. And then maybe to tie in one other point that you mentioned is around equity and ensuring that in this transition, as we develop these new innovations and these great new technologies and great new products, that we don't leave anybody behind. And so we've got a strong focus at GM about equitable climate action. You all got to be treated this morning by AY and his music, and you know, and it's part of our collaborations. We actually started working with AY through our partnership with NWF, and really looking for those opportunities for how do we make sure that communities that have been disproportionately affected by climate change are part of this transition and they're not left out. And so a lot of factors go into that, but really working with grassroots organizations in communities that are making a difference across the world is what's going to make the change happen.
That's great. And Walaa, do you see particular areas where collaboration has really benefited either your work or those of your partners and members? And also, are there any particular barriers that you see to collaboration that we need to be aware of as we move forward?
Okay, so let's first talk about successful collaboration. Okay, all the initiatives I mentioned, we had it in collaboration and partnership with very successful partners. The solar sector initiative, which aims at accelerating the growth of the solar sector in Egypt, we had it in partnership with Chemonics, Egypt Consultants. And the other one, which is for the construction and real estate building better initiative, we had it with Decarbon company. And we had another initiative which is anti-corruption, and we are going to have it with the government authority responsible for fighting corruption. So these are all very successful partnerships we already had. And on the level of the work itself, as I said earlier, we bring all the key stakeholders together. We bring the regulator, we bring the commercial sector. For the solar sector, we brought the off-takers, the commercial, the investors, the finance, the technical, everyone was there. So this was the beauty of it. And they were all buying in. They were all committed, and it went very smooth. About the problems or challenges, I believe regulation sometimes is a main challenge for every sector. It's not one specific sector. Changing regulation is not something easy. It needs persistence. It needs lobbying. It needs insistence to change it. It's not easy, and sometimes while we are talking about we want to promote solar energy, we are going to find millions and millions of decrees and laws that challenge this. So we need to understand that this is going to take some time, and we shall not lose hope. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess you point there to the potential mismatch between the scale and the speed of the change that we need to create and our regulatory systems as we go forward. Diana, that's an area you know far too well. Are there particular areas where you've seen collaboration really work in your work, and are there particular barriers or unlocks that you have seen that are enable that collaboration in those particular examples?
Well, the European Union is a major donor of development cooperation, and including of climate finance. The European Union, together with our member states, is the first donor of climate finance, and in fact, I think we are, if everybody was at the same level, we wouldn't have any problem to achieve the 100 billion. But we are, again, states or institutions like the European Commission, how do we get these funds to where they're needed? We cannot do it without partners. We cannot give for example, we cannot finance a municipality that wants to become greener in an African country, or we cannot finance a private company that, or an entrepreneur, a businessman or woman who has a brilliant idea. So we need partners. And one of the partnerships that I remember with perhaps the most pleasure of my period as ambassador in Ghana was with UNFDC. They were this UN agency specialized, in fact, in providing capital and innovative solutions to raise capital. And that was very interesting because we made a contract with them, and they started raising money for green projects in certain areas of the country where there was a particular need, because also they were areas where young people were prone to illegal migration, and most of them would get lost in Libya, and it was very, very painful stories. So to address this problem, we tried to get funds to them, and we did it with this UN agency that could do what we couldn't do. So they could, for example, organize crowdfunding for these companies. They could do partnerships with startups that had an app that could give these young people loans very, very easily. We're talking about very small loans, but as well, from the look here, probably some of you are coming from Africa, and you know that in many countries you don't need a lot of capital to start a company. You need, with $1,000, you can go a long way, and this is what they were doing. And they financed a few very interesting projects, and that's for me is the deepest meaning of partnership. You need someone that can take you to where you wouldn't be able to go alone. And we, being a big institution, we cannot go on the ground like where our partners would go. So we couldn't work without partners. Very simple.
Thank you. I'm going to dare to jump out to you, AY. You're not just here as an amazing rapper and singer. You're here as the special envoy for youth. So I just wonder if you can, Gayle, if you could just pass over, or if you have a mic, where do you see the importance of collaboration, and what do you need, and what do those who you're representing here need to enable us to accelerate the shift towards a more climate-ready future?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking. Hi, guys. I would definitely say, the youth need support, right? We need financial support. We just need support in general, and nothing can happen without collaboration, right? I actually think that there's too many silos between the different facets or sectors, and we really need to be able to break down these silos, build bridges, and connect, because if we're plugged into each other, like on the local level, which is the grassroots level, on the community level, and then here at COP is we're kind of coming together on the world level, right? That's how we can power change. So, but definitely, I think I'm always in the youth pavilion. I'm one of the 17. I'm one of the UNDP young leaders, and we're all kind of saying the same thing. You know, we need, obviously, to be financed and things like that, right? Like great projects, but overall we need our voice heard, and I think we have a lot of the solutions, and it's like bringing the solutions, we still need that top piece to kind of help us bring it to the world. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. And I'm hearing that it's not just that you need space for voice and those facilities to enable you to be part of the conversation, but you need to be listened to as well. And many of those solutions are coming from the youth. And I have to say, there was a brilliant article in the papers back in the UK a couple of days ago that said if you're looking for one beacon of hope from COP27, just go to the youth pavilion. So yeah, thank you.
We're making it happen.
We've got just a couple of minutes for questions, if I may, at this point. Is there anyone who has a question here? My gentleman in the back. Please, can you say who you are and represent?
Yeah, my name is Joe McFadden. I'm an animal scientist from Cornell University. I work a lot with corporations. They support my program. Very grateful. But I also see a lot of challenges to those academic industry partnerships. I certainly can speak to many of the barriers from the academic perspective, but I'd be interested to know what are some of the barriers that any of you see in terms of academic industry partnerships and potential solutions?
I'll start just with one quick one. You know, love Cornell University. We do a number of partnerships with Cornell. It's fabulous. I think that what we look for in the collaboration with universities is subject matter specific insights, and it's fantastic. Sometimes what's hard with university partnerships, and we, like I said, we do them, is there can be turnover with, you know, students graduating and things like that. So you switch from one to the next. But also, sometimes there's the pace. You know, and it depends a little bit on the industry that we're serving. Sometimes our healthcare business might be a little bit more tolerant of a slower pace versus our consumer business or our electronics business that might work faster. And sometimes that's one of the challenges that we find with universities. One example.
Great answer. Any other thoughts?
I guess I would just add, agree with what Gayle said. The partnerships are fantastic. We do great work with many universities, including Cornell. One of the things that I think is important as we continue conversations between the public sector and the academic sector, or companies and universities, is really around curriculum. And there's a lot of talk about how critical it is for us to develop green skills. And I maybe have a little bit different perspective. While I think the green skills and the experts in the environmental and climate space and that is so important, but we've got to get sustainability into all curriculums. It doesn't need to just be an expert. You know, what we find in our company, we need sustainability to be ingrained in every part of the organization, just like safety and quality are. And so I think it's really important to continue that conversation, that whatever curriculum you're talking about, that there's a sustainability factor included and an inclusivity, et cetera.
And for the Global Compact, we have some of the schools and universities in our network. I believe partnership with them haven't taken the right shape yet, but we are working with them on awareness on lots of sustainability topics. And the United Nations Global Compact have a sister initiative called PREM, and this is mainly focused on education and responsible education. So maybe this would be useful when we talk about academia partnership.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
My name is Nkopo Matsipi. I'm from World Food Program in Lesotho. My question is in regard to establishing partnership. We always have to go through long way establishing MOUs, contracts, that in the end we delay implementation processes. Is there any framework that simplifies collaboration such that we can also ensure commitments from different partners?
Thank you. Who wants to take that? Diana?
I know that he is talking about me because I think I've heard the same from she was the Deputy Director-General when she came to speak to us to Brussels. So I know that that there is some complication there, but I am not an expert in the matter. I think that more in general, yes. The international organizations, sometimes we make our life very difficult with our own procedure and requirements. But we, in the European Union, we have a question of accountability of what we spend. We're spending the money of the European taxpayers, and we have to account for what we do towards our member states and our citizens. So we have two layers of accountability that sometimes make the relationship with us quite difficult, and this is also why we need partners that are able to spend the money in a more agile way, because we cannot reach wherever we can reach. What can I say? We need to find new ways and more innovative formulas. One of the complaints that I've heard, and you have heard it for sure in this COP, is that for least developed countries like the one where you work in, it's very difficult to access the UNFCCC global funds. That somebody was telling me that to apply for a grant from the GCF, it's 150 pages, the form to fill. How can we do it? Well, the solution is again partnership, because I'm sure that any small country can find some consultant from UNDP of the World Bank to fill the form. But I agree that there is a problem there, that we are not, the finance that is out there is not easy to mobilize and is not easy to bring where it has to go. And for that, we have to find a way to make it easier. But it is very difficult, and you and I know very well how difficult it is.
So that's a strong call to action for all of these processes, to streamline, make them accessible, and to enable those who might not have previously participated to be able to access them. Okay, so we're really getting close to the end, and we're also close to the end of COP27. Sorry? Sir? I'm
Yeah,
sorry, sir.
Sorry. My name is Stephen from Uganda, and I really appreciate the process and the interactions. I find the case for Egypt, I think, that helps to bring together the different actors and private sector and create a platform that helps the exchange of knowledge and bring technologies and the like. But I just want to know, what are the specific activities that you carry out to effect those exchanges and partnerships? And how do you finance it? Because it is a bit complicated sometimes in some of our countries. I would like to learn from you, really, how do you operationalize those partnerships, and who are the key actors that you really bring together to support you? Thank you.
We just to say, we're very limited in time, and this conversation does not finish at the end of this live stream. So please, please continue. But please, Walaa.
So I'm going to make it very short, and we can have a side discussion afterwards. We finance most of the activities because we are getting membership fees from our companies, and we finance most of our activities. And when we work with an industry, sometimes the industry would love to finance, but I believe for us to carry out our activities, the problem is not the finance itself. The problem is not the problem is the action. It's not the finance. Maybe for the private sector to advance its sustainability agenda, access to finance is a big problem. But for us to finance our activities in Egypt, at least, because there is a passion and each of our participants believe in what we are doing, so we face no problem in that, and we can have a side discussion on that. Yeah, thank you.
It's a really key point. Who can you work with? Which partnerships will work? How do you make it real? Where are the financing mechanisms? How are you actually going to get to impact? So it's a really, really key question. We are right at the end. I've had the lady wave the end sign at me already. So I just want to do a very quick fire round just to speak to each of you. What is the one thing that you're going to take back to your desk about collaboration or a consequence of COP27 that will be on your agenda when you get back home? Would you like to start?
Sure, I'll just make it real simple. I would say optimism and opportunity and innovation.
Wow. Hello?
Working more on resilience and making sure the private sector understands that the KPIs for the traditional operation is not going to work anymore, and the sustainability KPIs will do the job.
Thank you. Diana?
As a newcomer to the climate action community, I will go home knowing that there is a lot out there, and there are a lot of interlocutors that I have to reach out and interact with, and I'm very excited about what expects me in the coming months and years.
Gayle?
Well, I had 3 words, but I'm going to add the optimism that Kristen said. So I would go with science, collaboration, and urgency. But I do have a renewed optimism after this COP, so I'm really excited about it as well. Thanks so much for everybody.
A.Y.?
I would say like art, culture, music. It has to be a part of this for us to achieve this. And I think that's what inspires, connects the youth. That's how I'm connecting the youth to take action, right? And that's actually your future workforce. Gen Z, millennials, has to be a part of the discussion.
I think if we say one thing from this, collaboration is not going away, and you won't be able to do it without it. So thank you to 3M, to the UNFCCC for this session. I hope it's given you inspiration. This is just the start of the conversation. Thank you to all of our panelists. If we could give them a round of applause. Thanks for a wonderful session.
Thank you.